Hey, if you like some of my NBA discussions here, make sure to subscribe to my other channel, which is original NBA content, which I post every week about different NBA topics. And yeah, it's a new channel, so make sure to support it. And yeah, hope you enjoy. Hi, my name is Lyric, and today we are going to be reacting to Shaquille O'Neal's power and agility made him nearly unstoppable. Greatest Peaks Episode 9. We're continuing with the Greatest Peaks series by Thinking Basketball. We did last episode was the Hakeem Olajuwon episode. Now we're doing the Shaquille O'Neal episode. We've already reacted to his highlights in the last video, so go check that out. And yeah, let's just get right into it.
In the last two episodes, we've seen two-way big men dominate in the golden era of centers. But
that was the episode Hakeem and David Robinson, which we both reacted to.
Goliath of that era was the biggest, Shaquille O'Neal. O'Neal
Diesel
was, quite simply, the most physically overpowering athlete in the history of basketball.
Damn right.
Or maybe any sport. He
Damn.
was more nimble than players he outweighed by 100
Look at this.
pounds.
Oh my god.
And at his apex,
absolutely
there
insane.
was far more to his game than just bullying people under the rim.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
What were those other pieces? And were they enough to make him the best offensive big man ever?
That's a good question, man. That's a good question. Oh, shit. This intro's hype, man.
This series tackles one question. Who was the best at his best? We start at the ABA merger and go through the best multi-year stretches, examining the legends who provided the most on-court impact. These are the greatest peaks.
Amazing series, man. We're almost done with it too, which is kind of making me a little bit sad. But I'm hyped to get to his top 10 players. He brought down the shot clock. That's a violation. Stacey Erickson scored 50 points off the bench that game. What?
Shaq was already a 300-plus pound physical marvel. Before O'Neal, Wilt Chamberlain was the benchmark for power on the court.
Right.
But Shaq took things to a whole new level.
Wilt didn't play a power game, though. He played more of a finesse game, even though he had the ability to just dominate anyone.
After his rookie season, they actually needed...
Because, you know, he's the best athlete of all time, at least in NBA history.
...to Shaq-proof the baskets.
Right.
And by his peak years in Los Angeles, he tipped the scales at around 340 pounds.
Nuts.
His
Absolutely
power
nuts.
game actually started without the ball. We rarely think of off-ball movement like this, but O'Neal created advantages by working for an extra 3 or 4 feet that made all the difference.
Yeah, man, you
With
can't
the
let
ball
him near
in
the
the
paint.
wing, Shaq flashes to the post but is doubled, so moving it to the top creates an easier entry. And notice O'Neal sit down and drive backwards at an angle to get deeper. Same position here, only Reggie Miller sags to prevent a pass to Shaq, but O'Neal sneaks a step or two closer to the goal, and so when it's swung to the corner, Shaq again seals himself
He always gets those extra steps because he's so powerful.
This was decidedly different than Wilt, who often parked himself in a spot and waited in a fairly upright position for an entry. Right here, he could seal Bill Russell under the rim, but in general, he wasn't looking for positional advantages like this. And while some of this is specific to an era with less bully ball in general, it's also a
less physical
difference in philosophy.
The 60s
when
was.
Shaquille moved across the lane, he was trying to get closer to the rim. Wilt would move more toward the ball. He doesn't duck in front of his man, but instead flashes to a spot like a finesse player.
Well, yeah, because Will could also hit those fadeaways and stuff, so he wasn't always trying to get directly at the
Ball
rim.
reversals, for example. This is okay position, but changing sides allows Shaq to get a quarter step and then chisel out a much deeper catch, and that's unstoppable. To prevent O'Neal from getting that step, savvier defenders took away his cut, but then reversing sides opened a new door because he was such a massive target. These counters are similar to perimeter players cutting backdoor off and over. Getting that step, savvier defenders took away his cut, but then reversing sides opened a new door because he was such a massive target. These counters are similar to perimeter players cutting backdoor off an overplay. Only Shaq's counters were about grappling for position in the paint, and he's sprightly enough to make catches like this. If teams tried to overplay the baseline, he could spin out the other side for the lob.
Spin move
Remember,
right there, yeah.
his defender is worried about Shaq getting inside that low leg to the baseline, where it's game over if he seals him off. Yet, O'Neal's quick enough to punish that overplay in an instant with those light tap dancing feet. This
Great footwork
is
for
some
his size.
basketball jiu-jitsu,
100%.
feeling more weight on his right leg and then rolling off to go time up the lob.
Beautiful
This
move.
explosive lateral athleticism is often overlooked in Shaq. Moving quickly at oblique angles was the
Oblique.
basis of his
Big
power
ass
game.
word.
He would drive through
Okay,
his
Edward Norton.
victims from the hips to overpower them with angles. Wilt didn't have that same low base explosiveness to spin or pirouette quite like O'Neal. His footwork was stiffer and he lacked the handle to set up these moves, whereas Shaq's agility combined with his weight carved out so many of his easy buckets. Shaq unleashed violence from the floor with his
He's comparing him to Wilt. I don't know if that's a great comparison, though. I think they had different types of games. Wilt was more of a finesse player. I don't know.
trunk and massive lower body. Wilt has said he was sensitive to being seen as a mere brute at the time, but Shaq leaned into this power as a way to displace opponents
Right.
before he even jumped. Chamberlain was strong enough to have this effect too, moving players with his lower body, but it wasn't the norm for him like it was Shaq, who bullied players onto their heels like a basketball Yokozuna, turning 260-pound Tim Duncan into a piñata to set up this drop step.
Nuts. Just casually posting up Tim Duncan.
O'Neal had some finesse too. He's setting up the drop step, but Dikembe Mutombo stays square with him, so Shaq switches to the fade.
Ooh,
This was a go-to move for him for years,
telling you, Shaq's way more skilled than people getting credit
often
for.
spinning to the baseline like this. And because of his 7.5-foot wingspan and jumping ability, he could fire this over giant defenders like Arvydas Sabonis. He also had surprising range on this shot, not quite to the foul line, we'll get to that in a minute, but out to about 12
Right.
or 13 feet.
That's a decent faraway
While
floater,
he
you
liked
know.
the drop step or that little turnaround to his right, he also had a jump hook over the other shoulder. He's denied here on his cut across the lane, which triggers that ball reversal, but Dale Davis stays with him well, and Shaq just falls back on a huge jump hook. It certainly was
Those jump hooks are
no
deadly, bro.
sky hook. Shaq thought that shot was uncool, but it was hard to defend given his size and speed
Alright.
off the floor. Between his hooks, powerful spins, and fadeaways, Shaq was an all-time great playoff scorer. At his
Right.
peak, he
38 points a game in the finals.
posted some of the best adjusted numbers in league history, trailing only Michael Jordan in number of stretches at this volume,
Makes
and doing
sense.
so on similar efficiency. I do
Pretty damn
think
good.
Shaq added a different dimension with his off-ball game. He racked up nearly 750 makes from close range in his MVP season, an outlier
Goddamn.
since those records have been kept back to 1997, and about 2/3 of those shots were assisted by teammates, which lands him between the 75th and 80th percentile historically. During the
So
Lakers'
much more than everyone
three-peat,
else.
Shaq didn't even
Anomaly.
attempt a shot outside of 15 feet in the playoffs, and nearly half
Damn.
of his shots came right at the
That's actually
rim.
crazy.
So he lived off a diet of the highest percentage attempts in the sport.
Which is why I think that he would be more effective in today's NBA because the paint's less crowded.
He added even more value without the ball as an offensive rebounder. His low post positioning battles organically segued into offensive rebounding position. Here comes that cut across the lane. It's jammed nicely, but Jackson lingers to double Shaq. So now Sam Perkins has to help off him, and the bull is loose in the china shop. Some of his prowess on the glass was just wedging himself near the hoop and out jumping people.
Yeah.
His 7'7" wingspan helped here, and so did his
7'7"
incredible springiness
wingspan, bro.
for someone that size, and he cleans up this mess with the sledgehammer. Again, check out his feet on this play and how his twinkle toes let him reset into a bunny hop multiple times. It was almost unfair to be so nimble at that size, and
Yeah.
boxing him out was unenviable.
Oh my
and
God.
the Shaq-proof basket
Did you see
works.
that, bro? That rebound
Teams
followed by the
tried
amazing
all kinds
slam.
of tactics, In the 2000 Western Finals, Portland went with the tag team holding method, but even those kinds of tricks weren't foolproof. Okay, that's not right.
Let me hear you say, that ain't right.
That's not fair, bro.
That ain't right.
That Blazers team was really the only defense to slow down O'Neal during the three-peat years, swarming him regularly behind the giant Arvydas Sabonis, who was
Four
about
players.
7
Everyone's
foot
on him.
3
Every
and
player's on him right
300
there.
pounds himself.
No
Sabonis
trouble.
had the mass to keep Shaq from completely overpowering him,
Sabonis could have been such a greater player. They actually let him play in the damn NBA when he was in his prime.
and the
instead of in
basketball
Europe.
IQ to overplay that baseline move he loved.
Ooh.
He also tried
Oh,
to deny
that's it.
Shaq's cut across the lane, making him catch it 3 or 4 feet farther out, and that makes a difference versus the Diesel.
Right. Big,
more-
every foot that you don't allow him to go in, it's like a really effective because he has such short
Realistic
range.
way to slow Shaq down was to foul him. There's the traditional method where he's in close, or the legendary hack-a-Shaq, where teams intentionally fouled
Right.
him at the end of the quarter. It often felt like Shaq was playing on a Nerf hoop, and the downside of that was at the line
It's difficult, bro. If you ever like played with like one of those little itty bitty hoops that you like put on your door or something with like a little phone, like a little Nerf ball or whatever, that like fits in your hand like this, so you have to hold it like this, bro. It's hard to shoot those, man. I think it's harder. It's harder for me to shoot those than actual basketball, man. I can see how Shaq was struggling, man. He was too powerful.
shot a Nerf ball.
His hands were too big. Everyone with big hands has a really tough time making free throws, man.
Hoop. And the downside of that
Well, I guess like Michael Jordan had pretty damn big hands. I don't know, but it's Michael Jordan, but you know what I'm saying. But like if you're like big and powerful and have big hands, it's like hard to shoot a
was
basketball,
at the
man.
line, he shot a Nerf ball. I've never understood how deliberately fouling a 53% free throw shooter was a winning play. That would be great half-court offense back in those days. Although when Shaq was powering up next to the hoop, 53% was way better than the 75% or so he shot at the rim. Because of this, he put entire
sense.
front lines into foul trouble, forcing playoff teams to keep unskilled bruising bigs on their bench just to buy minutes against him.
Oh my gosh.
So Shaq's attack...
Dude, watching Shaq highlights just don't make sense. It just does not make sense. Like how, bro, look at this. Look at this rebound.
Forcing playoff teams to keep unskilled bruising
Look at this
bigs
rebound.
on their bench.
How did he
just
get
to
that
buy
rebound?
Minutes against him.
Knocks him over and they have to foul him.
So Shaq's attack warped the entire game like few players ever have. But were the other...
Yeah, he's one of the players that, like, once he's on the court, the entire game plan for everyone changes. For both offense and for the defense of the other team. Like, he collapses all the defense in the paint. He fouls out all your players. He opens up shooters. And he's a great interior defender. He just does everything.
elements enough to make him the best center ever.
Birthday present. Shaquille O'Neal, who turns 27 tomorrow. Not bad. That's it from the forum. I'm Lauren Sanchez. Back to you.
Shaq,
Part
bro.
of the benefit of Shaq's positional sparring is that it led to quick-hitting catch-and-shoot plays, or in his case, maybe I should say catch-and-dunk plays.
Catch and
And
dunk,
by
yeah.
scoring immediately, he didn't take away many opportunities from teammates by monopolizing the ball. If Shaq
Right.
wasn't in a position to catch
Most of the time when he had the ball, he would just either pass it immediately or score immediately.
go, one card he could play was the repost, giving the ball up to find that superior position without dribbling. This was a natural bridge between his scoring and playmaking, where if he felt a double team in these spots, he quickly kicked it out and could repost, but if that didn't lead to deeper position, he'd play the same game again.
I think Shaq was one of the best passing big men in
He
his
was
era,
quite patient in these situations, waiting for defenses to commit to blitzing
from
him,
what I've seen.
and he would move it to the direction the help came from to
Oh, the nice
punish
pass.
them. If the double dropped down from the top, Shaq surveyed and comfortably tossed it back out to a teammate. If it came
That's what I'm saying about the opening up the
the
shooters.
opposite corner, right away he looked to that corner, and in general he was really good at attacking the location of a double team. Allen
Great ball
Iverson
movement
doubles
there.
off a different Laker, and Shaq gashes it,
Oh,
and
big
then
mistake.
still cleans up the play himself
Oh,
with
get the
that
rebound.
rebounding. He could work his way through progressions too. Here's a double from the top, but New Jersey shifts its defense to take away the basic kick out.
Every single player is looking at Shaq.
So Shaq looks to the cutter, and that's picked up well, which leaves the skip pass to the opposite wing. Notice how he swivels his head when he catches an entry,
five-time
so
champion.
he can see the action unfolding and find the optimal play. And his processing speed in
He has
these
good
spots
vision,
was
man.
quite strong. He spots the double before he lands here, and then holds the defender with a no-look pass.
I'm telling you, man,
watch
these
his head.
passes.
Before the ball hits his hands, he's surveying the floor, so he knows the lane is open if his cutter has half a step, and hooks up Robert Horry with perfect touch on a bounce pass.
Bro.
Shaq was willing to try tighter paths
Yo, Shaq might be the best center of all time, bro. No.
in the paint
Oh my
like
god.
this. He sends this to open space in the middle of the lane with a little hop and a soft touch. Shaq was right-hand dominant as a passer, treating the basketball
One of the best scorers, a fantastic rebounder, possibly the best passing big man at the time, one of the best defenders. I mean, what more can you ask
like
for,
a
man? Oh my god.
dodgeball, and that led to some limitations or awkward deliveries at times. He would occasionally throw one too hot or miss his target like this, although he also had
too
some
strong.
brilliant deliveries too. This looks like a skip pass, but it's a changeup that drops perfectly to a cutter.
Dude, Shaquille
On this
Jokic,
play,
man.
He sees Iverson fall asleep,
Shaquille
and those
Jokic.
giant hands make this touch pass an easy bucket. Some
Nice.
speedy neurological processing also helped him audible at times. He's flowing into a catch and shoot here, but switches to a pass at the last second after spotting a double, and as Coach Bird can attest to, that is just
Amazing.
too good. For my money,
Shaq might have like a top 3 peak ever. Like, this peak is actually
Shaq is the
insane.
best low post passer among the great 90s centers, but there were some holes in his vision. He could
Okay,
miss
here we go.
openings on the opposite block. He threads it once he sees Horace Grant, but a great pass arrives 2 seconds earlier.
Well,
Here's that same action again over Shaq's left shoulder, and he's blind to it, and this is a connection that excellent post passers make most of the time. Similarly, he could also miss
So
the
lacking a bit of
baseline
vision here.
cut from the same side of the court, and I think this is the trade-off of conditioning himself to spot the double team instead of holistically reading the floor. He misses the easy layup here, but is quick to hit a spot-up shooter. Since
Better
he
than the
was
shooters than the
quick to
cutters.
react to doubles, his teammates had some wide-open threes.
yeah,
This
bro.
is similar to what we saw last episode with Akeem's Rockets, where surrounding him with capable shooters punished double teams, and dotting the arc with these players, and even a stretch 4, optimized Shaq's inside-out value. Outside of a white-hot playoff run in 2001, those Lakers were never really a good three-point shooting team, but they had enough respectable shooters on the court to space the floor and keep defenses honest, which allowed a more defensively slanted supporting cast to play off Shaq while maintaining those offensive heights.
Need some 3 and D
As a
players around him.
result, LA's attacks were very good in the regular season and all-time good in the playoffs, able to maintain their regular season efficiency.
Shaq got better in the
against
playoffs all
those
the time.
Super stingy playoff
Clutch-ass player.
defenses of that era, because almost no one had a way to slow down these Shaq-centric offenses. With Shaq on the
Right.
bench, the Lakers' playoff offensive rating dropped by nearly 12
Yeah.
points during
Insane.
those repeat runs
Insane.
to about 98
And that's with Kobe Bryant.
points per 100. Even a young Kobe Bryant couldn't carry that kind of roster with a
Right.
replacement level center subbed in for Shaq.
All I'm saying is, you really think about it. You take a Shaq off this roster looking like a worse version of the 2006 Lakers. That's all I'm saying.
Although Froby was a great fit next to O'Neal. He was
Froby.
already an elite offensive wing who could play make and generate his own shot.
Yeah, he was like an all-star level player at this time, and then in 2000, he just wasn't like a superstar level until like the next year, like 01.
With Shaq probing for position, teams were less likely to throw defensive attention toward Kobe, who already had a bevy of isolation scoring moves to unleash, and because
Kobe
of
Bryant, bro.
Shaquille's off-ball activity, he didn't take away many touches from Bryant.
Nothing prettier than a
O'Neal
fadeaway.
fit
Nothing more satisfying in the NBA than a clean-ass fadeaway.
incredibly well next to penetrators like this because his defenders were so reluctant to leave him near the hoop. and this gave Kobe a little more airspace when attacking the cup. When bigs were forced to help, it freed up Shaq on the glass for cleanup duty. What a ridiculous...
So also, if not only do you free up the shooters, you also free up the slashers that are trying to go to the rim from not where Shaq's at.
duo they were. I also think there was a strong
Best duo ever, Benny.
defense, especially when Bryant was at his defensive peak in the year 2000. Shaq could be statuesque at times, not venturing far from the lane and often dropping deep on pick and rolls. And Kobe's ability to chase ball handlers,
Yeah, I know for his perimeter
and
defense.
at times hound guards at the point of attack, shored up O'Neal's stationary defense.
Kobe, one of the best
And the
defenders
Diesel
ever, baby.
could be stuck in neutral for entire possessions. He stretched that 3-second rule on both ends. And despite Kobe's ball denial on Iverson here, they still give up an open
That might have
jumper.
been 3 seconds, yeah.
There were a bunch of reasons why Shaq just camped out in the key a lot. First, his defensive strength was protecting the rim, especially against smaller wings who challenged his massive frame and his giant reach. And when he was loaded up and in position to contest, he could get to shots like this quickly.
Oh my god, the
Second,
jump
he was
reach on that.
conserving energy. It takes a lot to move 340 pounds around the court.
That
And
makes
Shaquille
sense,
was
to be
asked
fair.
to play 43 minutes per game in the playoffs at his peak.
Yeah.
And in his condition, he
Jalen Brunson type
lacked
beat.
the motor to do that while stepping out to the perimeter on defense. Or even sitting down in a stance and moving more in tight spaces. There were a number of instances where he was slow getting back in transition, jogging down the court at a leisurely pace,
I mean, bro is 340 pounds playing 43
and in
minutes. What
some
do you expect, to
instances
be
he
honest?
never really made it back into the play. And in their playoff matchups, the Kings had some success running him until fatigue kicked in. Also, Shaq parked himself in the paint because his change of direction wasn't swift enough to make recovering easy, and he wasn't fast enough to help down from the outside like the last two centers in this series. On offense,
like Robinson and
he
Hakeem.
could dictate where all that mass went, but having to react on defense wasn't as easy. He's not agile enough to toggle around here smoothly, and kind of bear hugs his man and ends up on the wrong side of the play. All this was compounded by inconsistent awareness, where on some plays he was a bit slow to read potential threats, and on others he was sort of asleep at the wheel with a play unfolding in front of him. This shows up when we look at how opposing teams shot at the rim when O'Neal was on the court.
So this could be a reason why you would maybe say he wouldn't be as good at the modern game, because the game's faster, and if he's like slower, like at this time, it could be a bad sign for like, you know, the faster game now. And also he'd have to guard more perimeter because, you know, centers be able to shoot threes now and shit. So he wouldn't have to be, he couldn't just be in the paint a lot of times. So
Opponents
maybe you could say on defense, you know, he would actually get worse in the modern
got
NBA.
slightly
100%.
worse than average in 2000 and at exactly average in 2001, which is a far cry from elite defensive big men like the Spurs Twin Towers or the Georgetown Center.
Right.
On the plus side,
Yeah.
teams didn't take too many of these high percentage shots in the restricted area against O'Neal, probably due to his intimidation.
Deterring
In other
factor. My guy's got an intimidator badge.
There was some benefit to him lingering in the lane. Many opponents didn't want to challenge Shaq's shot blocking or take the physical punishment he could dish out on hard fouls. On occasion, he would
Yeah, you don't want to get fouled by a 340-pound, 7'1" dude.
shift into fifth gear and string together really active defensive possessions, leaving the paint, moving his feet, and giving us a glimpse at what his
Here we
defense
go.
would have looked like with a high-revving motor. Of course, most of the time he roamed around
block,
the lane
bro.
like a grazing elephant, so teams with jump-shooting big men would punish him on the perimeter.
Yeah, like him. He wouldn't be able to guard
Shaq did
Jokic.
not want to switch onto wings and was reluctant to come out on them. Here,
A lot more switches in the modern game, too. So, yeah, you can see how that could be a
And
weakness.
it leads to a clean three, and teams would go at him in pick and roll, leaving his teammates on an island against the screener and ball handler, and Shaq's reluctance to venture out helped Allen Iverson in his famous 2001 outburst, and the ultimate example of this was Mike Bibby's pull-up jumper parade in the 2002
Mike
Western
Bibby.
Finals that nearly unseated the Lakers. This also made it really easy for big men to pick and pop their way into wide open jumpers. So when teams started,
Which is a lot more
torching
prevalent
LA
in the
like
modern
this,
NBA.
they
A lot more
would bring
prevalent.
Shaq up to the level of the screen, where he could contest pull-ups. This was actually a major tactical adjustment in that big Game 7 comeback in 2000 against Portland, and there's one of those high-energy defensive possessions. Note that most of these shots then were long twos because there weren't many pull-up three practitioners in the league at that point.
Steve Smith, though, got
In
that.
2000 and 2001, the Lakers posted a 103 defensive rating without Shaq on the court, slightly ahead of league average. With him, they were about 2 points better, and more complex adjustments for teammates and opponent quality view him as a solid positive on defense in those seasons, although not a star. We see a similar story looking at his missed games, the same method we used back in episode 2, where in 25 contests as the only starter missing, LA was almost a 500 team. But when Shaq returned to the lineup, they played at a 62-win pace. Most of that change was on offense. Equally as impressive is how the Lakers fared without Kobe in those years. In 29 games, where he was the only starter missing, LA played at a 50
Kobe fans about to be mad.
4-win pace with an offense nearly 3 points ahead of the league. And that's without a playmaker replacing Bryant, a
Kobe
testament
fans
to
mad.
Shaq's
Kobe fans
offensive
mad.
floor raising with a 3 roster. Similarly, one number impact metrics rank
A lot
him
more 3
among
D
the
players, modern
all-time
NBA,
greats,
just saying.
primarily because of his offensive value.
Third.
To me, there's enough value from that paint protection for him to be a decently positive defender. He was even somewhat effective as a man defender during those years, just based on his size and sheer athleticism. And the overall nature of his offense,
Spacing,
which was off
first
ball,
percentile.
quick hitting,
16th
and
all-time
so
scoring
difficult
rate.
to slow down, made him unique among big men in NBA.
Offense, all-time level interior scoring, good post passer to cutters and three-point shooters, off-ball game, rebounding and paint movement, plus gravity fit well with wings, all-time foul draw weight, no outside game whatsoever. Defense, high-level shot blocker when in position and paint, / size equals strongman defender. Low motor plus super stationary in paint, not quick to help, easy to stretch and pick and roll, or with jump shooting big men.
NBA history, and gives him a strong argument as the most dominant big man ever.
Alright, so that was the making the case on Shaq. Comment below. Do you think Shaq is the greatest center of all time? If so, or if you don't, comment why, and who you have above him, or why you think he's the best. And yeah, we'll see you in the next video. Bye.